He wanted to show off his rich fiancée, but his ex arrived with a secret that destroyed his wedding. Okay, so listen to this story because honestly, you're not gonna believe what went down at this wedding. Like, I'm still processing it myself, and I heard about it from 3 different people who were actually there. This whole thing is absolutely wild from start to finish. So there's this guy, right? His name's Marcus. Marcus Chen. And look, I gotta be real with you, Marcus was always that guy, you know what I mean? The one who's gotta make everything about status and showing off and proving he's better than everyone else. We all knew somebody like that in school, right? Well, Marcus never really grew out of it. Now, Marcus grew up pretty middle class, nothing fancy. His parents owned a small restaurant in the city, worked their butts off every single day. Good people, super hardworking. But Marcus? Man, he always wanted more, always felt like he deserved to be living this luxury lifestyle, driving fancy cars, wearing designer clothes, the whole 9 yards. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with ambition, right? But with Marcus, it was different. It wasn't just about wanting nice things for himself. It was about making sure everyone knew he had nice things. It was about rubbing it in people's faces. So anyway, fast forward to like 3 years ago. Marcus is working at this tech startup, doing pretty well for himself, actually. He's making decent money, finally got that BMW he always wanted, moved into a nice apartment downtown. Things are looking up for him. And that's when he meets Vanessa. Vanessa Whitmore. Now, Vanessa comes from money, like serious money. Her dad's some big shot real estate developer, owns half the commercial buildings downtown. Her mom's on the board of like every charity organization in the state. They've got that old money vibe, you know? The kind of family that's been wealthy for generations with the country club memberships and the vacation homes and all that stuff. And Marcus? Oh man, when he met Vanessa, it was like all his dreams came true at once. She was beautiful, sure, but I think what really got him was her last name. That Whitmore name opened doors, you know? Suddenly he's getting invites to these exclusive events, meeting people he never would have had access to before. He's posting pictures on social media at fancy galas, on yachts, at private wine tastings. Every single post was basically screaming, "Look at me! Look how successful I am! Look who I'm dating!" But here's the thing nobody really talks about, at least not at first. Before Vanessa, Marcus was actually in a pretty serious relationship. Her name was Jamie Rodriguez. And Jamie was like the complete opposite of Vanessa in every way. Jamie grew up in the same neighborhood as Marcus, actually. Her parents were immigrants, came here with basically nothing and built a life from the ground up. Jamie worked her way through community college while holding down 2 jobs, eventually got her nursing degree. She was smart, she was kind, she was genuine. And she loved Marcus, like really loved him, back when he was still figuring out who he was, before all the status chasing got really bad. They dated for like 4 years. 4 years! That's a long time, right? Everyone thought they were going to get married. Jamie's mom already loved Marcus like a son. They had this whole future planned out together. But somewhere along the way, Marcus started changing. He got that job at the tech startup, doing pretty well for himself, actually. He's making decent money, finally got that BMW he always wanted, moved into a nice apartment downtown. Things are looking up for him. And that's when he meets Vanessa. Vanessa Whitmore. Now, Vanessa comes from money, like serious money. Her dad's some big shot real estate developer, owns half the commercial buildings downtown. Her mom's on the board of like every charity organization in the state. They've got that old money vibe, you know? The kind of family that's been wealthy for generations with the country club memberships and the vacation homes and all that stuff. And Marcus? Oh man, when he met Vanessa, it was like all his dreams came true at once. She was beautiful, sure, but I think what really got him was her last name. That Whitmore name opened doors, you know? Suddenly he's getting invites to these exclusive events, meeting people he never would have had access to before. He's posting pictures on social media at fancy galas, on yachts, at private wine tastings. Every single post was basically screaming, "Look at me! Look how successful I am! Look who I'm dating!" But here's the thing nobody really talks about, at least not at first. Before Vanessa, Marcus was actually in a pretty serious relationship. Her name was Jamie Rodriguez. And Jamie was like the complete opposite of Vanessa in every way. Jamie grew up in the same neighborhood as Marcus, actually. Her parents were immigrants, came here with basically nothing and built a life from the ground up. Jamie worked her way through community college while holding down 2 jobs, eventually got her nursing degree. She was smart, she was kind, she was genuine, and she loved Marcus, like really loved him. Back when he was still figuring out who he was, before all the status chasing got really bad. They dated for like 4 years. 4 years! That's a long time, right? Everyone thought they were going to get married. Jamie's mom already loved Marcus like a son. They had this whole future planned out together. But somewhere along the way, Marcus started changing. He got that job at the tech startup, doing pretty well for himself, actually. He's making decent money, finally got that BMW he always wanted, moved into a nice apartment downtown. Things are looking up for him. And that's when he meets Vanessa. Vanessa Whitmore. Now, Vanessa comes from money, like serious money. Her dad's some big shot real estate developer, owns half the commercial buildings downtown. Her mom's on the board of like every charity organization in the state. They've got that old money vibe, you know? The kind of family that's been wealthy for generations with the country club memberships and the vacation homes and all that stuff. And Marcus? Oh man, when he met Vanessa, it was like all his dreams came true at once. She was beautiful, sure, but I think what really got him was her last name. That Whitmore name opened doors, you know? Suddenly, he's getting invites to these exclusive events, meeting people he never would have had access to before. He's posting pictures on social media, at fancy galas, on yachts, at private wine tastings. Every single post was basically screaming, "Look at me! Look how successful I am! Look who I'm dating!" But here's the thing nobody really talks about, at least not at first. Before Vanessa, Marcus was actually in a pretty serious relationship. Her name was Jamie Rodriguez. And Jamie was like the complete opposite of Vanessa in every way. Jamie grew up in the same neighborhood as Marcus, actually. Her parents were immigrants, came here with basically nothing and built a life from the ground up. Jamie worked her way through community college while holding down 2 jobs, eventually got her nursing degree. She was smart, she was kind, she was genuine, and she loved Marcus, like really loved him. Back when he was still figuring out who he was, before all the status chasing got really bad. They dated for like 4 years. 4 years, that's a long time, right? Everyone thought they were going to get married. Jamie's mom already loved Marcus like a son. They had this whole future planned out together. But somewhere along the way, Marcus started changing. He got that job at the tech startup, started making more money, and suddenly, Jamie wasn't enough for him anymore. She wasn't fancy enough, her family wasn't connected enough, she didn't fit the image he was trying to build for himself. So, he broke up with her. Just like that. And look, breakups happen, right? People grow apart, that's life. But the way Marcus did it was just cruel. He basically told Jamie that she was holding him back, that he needed someone who could match his ambition. Can you imagine hearing that from someone you've been with for 4 years? Someone you thought you were going to marry? Jamie was absolutely devastated, like completely heartbroken. But you know what? She picked herself up, threw herself into her work, focused on her career. She didn't blast him on social media, didn't talk trash about him to their mutual friends. She just quietly moved on with her life, even though everyone could tell she was hurting. Meanwhile, Marcus met Vanessa like 6 months later, and suddenly it was like Jamie never even existed. He scrubbed all the pictures of her from his social media, never mentioned her, acted like those 4 years just didn't happen, and he went all in with Vanessa, posting about her constantly, talking about how he'd finally found his perfect match, all this stuff that was clearly meant to show everyone, including Jamie, that he'd upgraded. Now, Vanessa's family wasn't exactly thrilled about Marcus at first. I mean, they were polite and everything, but you could tell they had their doubts. Her dad especially was kind of skeptical. But Marcus, he turned on the charm full blast. He learned about wine, started dressing even fancier, basically molded himself into exactly what he thought they wanted to see. And eventually it worked. They warmed up to him, or at least they seemed to. After dating for about 1.5 years, Marcus proposed. And not any proposal. Oh no. This man rented out an entire rooftop restaurant, had a string quartet playing, rose petals everywhere, the works. He live streamed part of it on social media. I mean, of course he did, right? It's Marcus does something and doesn't post about it. Didn't even happen. Vanessa said yes, obviously. And honestly, despite everything, despite Marcus being who he was, I think she did actually love him. Or at least she loved the version of himself that he was showing her. Whether that was the real Marcus or just another performance, well, that's a whole other question. So then the wedding planning starts. And oh my God, you guys, this wedding was going to be the event of the year. No expense was spared. We're talking about a venue at this gorgeous historic mansion, celebrity wedding planner, flowers being flown in from Ecuador, a dress that cost more than most people's cars. The guest list was like 250 people. All these important business contacts and society people and influencers. It was going to be featured in magazines and everything. And Marcus? Man, he was in his element. Every aspect of this wedding was carefully curated to show off, to prove he'd made it, to demonstrate that he belonged in Vanessa's world. He was posting updates about the wedding planning constantly. Cake tasting at the city's most exclusive bakery. Just finalized the guest list for the wedding of the year. My beautiful fiancé and I choosing flowers. Every post was dripping with that humble brag energy, you know? But here's where things start to get interesting. About 2 months before the wedding, Marcus runs into an...
There are messages spanning 3 weeks, Marcus, Jamie said quietly. Some of them sent in the middle of the afternoon. Were you drunk for 3 weeks straight? Vanessa handed the phone back to Jamie and just stood there for a moment like she was trying to process everything. Her bridesmaids had come up to the altar now, surrounding her, asking if she was okay. Vanessa's mom was crying. Her dad looked absolutely furious, staring at Marcus like he wanted to murder him on the spot. I can't believe this, Vanessa finally said. We've been planning this wedding for over a year. I've been planning our future, our life together. And the whole time, you've been pining after your ex? The whole time, you've been lying to me?
I haven't been lying, Marcus protested. I love you, Vanessa, I swear. Do you? Vanessa interrupted him. Do you really love me, Marcus? Or do you love my family's name? Do you love the doors that being with me opens for you? Do you love the Instagram posts and the social status and everything that comes with being a Whitmore? Marcus opened his mouth but didn't say anything. And honestly, that silence said everything. That's what I thought, Vanessa said quietly. She looked down at her engagement ring, this enormous diamond that probably cost more than most people make in a year. She twisted it off her finger and held it out to Marcus. I can't do this. I'm sorry, I just can't. Vanessa, no! Wait! Marcus reached for her hand, but Vanessa stepped back. Don't, she said firmly. Just don't. This whole thing, our entire relationship, was it ever even real? Or was I just another status symbol for you to show off? That's not fair, Marcus said, and he was starting to cry now too. You can't just throw away everything we have because of some old messages to my ex. Some old messages from 2 months ago? Vanessa corrected him. 2 months before our wedding, Marcus. And you know what the worst part is? I don't think you even realize how messed up that is. I don't think you understand what's wrong with any of this. Vanessa's dad had made his way up to the altar now. We're done here, he said to Marcus, his voice cold. I want you away from my daughter. Now. Sir, please, if I could just talk to Vanessa alone for a minute, Marcus started. But Mr. Whitmore cut him off. You've done enough talking. Security! The security guards that had been hired for the wedding finally sprang into action, moving toward Marcus. The whole scene was completely surreal. All these people in their fancy clothes, watching the groom get escorted away from his own wedding while his bride was standing there in her gorgeous dress, crying, with his ex-girlfriend standing a few feet away. Before the security guards reached him, Marcus turned to Jamie one more time. You did this, he said, his voice bitter. You couldn't stand to see me happy, so you ruined everything. Jamie shook her head. No, Marcus. You ruined this all by yourself. I just made sure Vanessa knew the truth before she made the biggest mistake of her life. And then Marcus was being led away, still protesting, still trying to explain, but nobody was listening anymore. The crowd was buzzing with shocked conversation. People were pulling out their phones, texting, probably already spreading the news about what had just happened. This was going to be all over social media within the hour, but not in the way Marcus had planned. Vanessa's bridesmaids surrounded her, hugging her, trying to comfort her as she sobbed. Her mom had come up too, holding her, telling her it was going to be okay. The officiant just stood there awkwardly, clearly having no idea what the protocol was for a situation like this.
Jamie started to walk back down the aisle, her job done, but before she got very far, Vanessa called out to her. "Wait." Jamie turned around. Vanessa had pulled away from her bridesmaids and walked over to where Jamie was standing. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, wiping her tears. "I know that couldn't have been easy. Coming here, exposing him like that, you could have just ignored his messages and let me marry him without knowing any of this. But you didn't. You looked out for me, a complete stranger. Why?" Jamie gave her a sad smile. "Because I know what it's like to be with someone who's more in love with an image than with you. I wasted 4 years with Marcus, and I don't want anyone else to make that same mistake. You seem like a genuinely good person, Vanessa. You deserve someone who loves you, not for your last name or your family's connections or what they can do for their social status." Vanessa started crying again, but she pulled Jamie into a hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "Seriously, thank you." After a moment, they pulled apart, and Jamie asked, "Are you gonna be okay?" Vanessa laughed, but it was kind of a broken sound. "Eventually, yeah. I mean, my wedding just imploded in front of 250 people, and I'm probably gonna be a meme by tomorrow, but yeah, I'll be okay. Better to find out now than after I actually married him, right?" "Exactly," Jamie agreed. Then she hesitated before asking, "Can I give you one more piece of advice?" "Sure, why not? This day can't get any weirder." "Don't let this make you cynical," Jamie said. "Don't let Marcus ruin love for you. There are good people out there, people who will love you the right way. I found mine. You'll find yours too." Vanessa nodded, trying to smile through her tears. "I hope so." Then Jamie really did leave, walking back down that aisle and out of that garden, out of Marcus's life for good. Some of Marcus's old friends who remembered her from back when she and Marcus were dating gave her supportive nods as she passed. One of them, a girl named Melissa, who'd always liked Jamie better than she liked Marcus, actually got up and walked out with her, telling her she'd been rooting for her this whole time. After Jamie left, there was this long moment where nobody really knew what to do. I mean, what are you supposed to do when a wedding gets canceled mid-ceremony, right? There's no etiquette book for that. Finally, Vanessa's mom took charge. She got up in front of everyone and said, in this shaky but determined voice, "Obviously, there's not going to be a wedding today. We apologize for any inconvenience and we thank you all for coming. The reception hall and all the food and drinks have already been paid for, so please join us there if you'd like. No sense in letting it all go to waste." And honestly, most people did go to the reception. Not because they were celebrating anything, but because after witnessing something that dramatic, everyone needed a drink and wanted to talk about what just happened. Plus, like Vanessa's mom said, it was all already paid for. $50,000 worth of catering in an open bar. People weren't going to pass that up. So this whole crowd of people made their way to the reception venue, this beautiful ballroom that had been decorated with thousands of flowers and candles and all these elegant details. The band was already set up. The cake, this enormous 5-tier thing, was displayed on a special table. Place cards were set out at all the tables, showing everyone where they were supposed to sit. But instead of a wedding reception, it turned into like the world's most expensive therapy session/gossip fest. Vanessa changed out of her wedding dress into one of the regular dresses she'd brought for after the ceremony. She came to the reception, which honestly took guts. A lot of people probably would have just gone home and hidden, but Vanessa showed up. She wasn't going to let Marcus rob her of anything about this day. Her friends surrounded her, kept checking on her, made sure she had food and water even though she probably couldn't eat anything. People kept coming up to her, expressing their sympathy, saying they couldn't believe what had happened, telling her she was better off finding out now. And Vanessa handled it with so much grace, honestly. She kept thanking people for coming, apologizing for the drama, making jokes about how at least they'd have a good story to tell. But you could tell she was devastated. Every now and then, when she thought nobody was looking, her face would just crumple, and you could see how much pain she was in. Meanwhile, Marcus had been taken to the hotel where he and the groomsmen had gotten ready. Chris and a couple of the other guys had gone with him, partly to make sure he was okay, partly to get some answers about what the hell had just happened. According to Chris, who told people about this later, Marcus completely fell apart. He was crying, angry, defensive, cycling through every emotion. He kept saying it wasn't fair, that Jamie had ruined everything, that the messages didn't mean anything, that he really did love Vanessa. But when Chris pressed him on it, asked him straight up if he'd been having second thoughts about the marriage, he couldn't give a straight answer. "I just wanted to make sure I was making the right choice," Marcus apparently said. "2 months before your marriage?" Chris replied. "Man, if you were still unsure 2 months before your wedding, you shouldn't have been getting married at all." Marcus didn't have a response to that either. Chris also asked him about all the social media stuff, the constant posting, the flexing, the obvious showing off. Asked him why it mattered so much, what other people thought, why he needed everyone to see how great his life was. And Marcus, in a moment of honesty, admitted that he'd been trying to prove something. To Jamie, to everyone who knew him growing up, to himself. He'd wanted to show that he had made it, that he was successful, that leaving his old life behind had been the right move. But was it worth it? Chris asked him that. And Marcus didn't answer that one either. Back at the reception, people were still dissecting everything that had happened. The story was already spreading beyond just the people who'd been there. People were texting friends, calling family members, posting vague things on social media about the craziest wedding drama ever. By the end of the night, half the city probably knew that Marcus Chen's wedding had been crashed by his ex-girlfriend who'd exposed his lies. Some people were Team Vanessa, saying she dodged a bullet and that Marcus had always seemed fake. Some people actually felt bad for Marcus, thought that Jamie had been vindictive and cruel for exposing him in front of everyone. And some people were Team Jamie, saying she'd done the right thing by making sure Vanessa knew the truth. Personally, I'm Team Jamie all the way. Yeah, it was dramatic.
Deserved to know the truth before legally binding herself to someone who was still hung up on his ex and who might have been marrying her for all the wrong reasons. Anyway, as the night went on, more details started emerging. Turns out this wasn't even the first time Marcus had reached out to Jamie since they broke up. She'd been getting occasional messages from him for the past 3 years, usually late at night, usually saying he was thinking about her or asking how she was doing. Jamie had ignored most of them, but they'd been frequent enough that her boyfriend David actually knew about them. David had been the one who encouraged Jamie to block Marcus's number when the messages started getting more intense a couple months ago. And get this, one of Marcus's coworkers who was at the wedding spilt some tea about how Marcus had been acting at work lately. Apparently, he'd been distracted, making mistakes, seemed stressed out about something beyond normal wedding planning stress. This coworker said Marcus had even called in sick a few times, which he never did. Everyone had assumed he was just overwhelmed with wedding stuff, but now it made sense. He'd been having a full-on crisis about whether he was making the right choice. You know what the really messed up part is? Vanessa would have probably understood if Marcus had just been honest with her. If he'd come to her months ago and said, "Hey, I've been having some confusing feelings. I think we should talk to a couples counselor before we get married," she probably would have appreciated that honesty. They could have worked through it. Or if they couldn't, they could have called off the wedding before it got to this point. But Marcus didn't do that. He kept it all hidden, kept up the perfect facade, kept planning this elaborate wedding and posting about it online, all while secretly reaching out to his ex and having doubts about everything. And that's why people lost sympathy for him. It wasn't even about the fact that he'd had doubts. It was about the lying, the hiding, the performing happiness while feeling something completely different underneath. Vanessa's dad ended up making a statement to the guests before people started leaving the reception. He stood up, got everyone's attention and said, "I want to thank you all for being here today and for supporting my daughter through this difficult time. What happened today was unfortunate, but I'm grateful that the truth came out before Vanessa made a permanent mistake. My daughter is strong, she's resilient, and she's going to be just fine. As for Marcus Chen, let's just say he won't be welcome in our family or our social circles anymore." Which was basically Mr. Whitmore's way of saying that Marcus's whole social climbing scheme had just crashed and burned. All those connections he'd made through Vanessa's family, gone. All the business relationships he'd been building, probably gonna evaporate once word spread about what happened. The social status he'd been so desperate to achieve, done.
Marcus's parents showed up at the hotel later that night. They'd been at the wedding, had witnessed the whole thing, and were absolutely mortified. Marcus's mom was crying, his dad looked disappointed and angry. According to people who saw them, they had a long, intense conversation with Marcus about responsibility, honesty, and respecting people's feelings. They'd always liked Jamie, had been sad when Marcus broke up with her, and apparently they were not happy about what their son had become. As for Jamie, she went home that night to David, who'd been waiting anxiously to hear how everything went. She told him the whole story, and he just held her while she processed everything. Because even though she had done what she felt was right, even though she didn't want Marcus back, it had still been emotionally exhausting to confront him like that, to publicly reveal his lies. "Do you regret it?" David asked her. Jamie thought about it for a moment. "No," she finally said. "I wish I hadn't had to do it. I wish Marcus had just been honest with Vanessa from the start, but I don't regret making sure she knew the truth. She deserved that much." The next few days were wild in terms of the gossip and fallout. The story spread everywhere. Local news even picked it up as like a human interest piece, though they didn't name names. Social media was going crazy with people sharing their own wedding disaster stories and debating whether Jamie had done the right thing. Marcus deleted all his social media accounts. Every single one. All those carefully curated posts about his perfect life, his beautiful fiancé, his amazing wedding, all gone. He basically went into hiding, didn't show up to work, wasn't answering calls or texts from anyone except his parents and like one or two close friends. Vanessa, on the other hand, made one single post on her Instagram. It was just a simple message that said, "Thank you to everyone who has reached out with concern and support. Yes, my wedding didn't happen, and yes, I'm heartbroken, but I'm also grateful for the truth, painful as it was to hear. I'm taking time to focus on myself and heal. Please respect my privacy during this time." She got thousands of supportive comments from friends, family, and even strangers who'd heard the story. People were really rallying around her, which was nice to see. A few weeks later, more information came out through the grapevine. Vanessa had started seeing a therapist to work through everything. She was taking time off work, staying with her parents, really just trying to process the whole experience. Her friends were making sure she wasn't isolating herself, taking her out for low-key dinners, movie nights, that kind of thing. Marcus, meanwhile, had apparently been doing some soul-searching. According to Chris, who was one of the few people still talking to him, Marcus had finally started to realize how toxic his mindset had become. The constant need for validation, the obsession with status and appearances, the way he'd valued image over genuine connection. All of it. He had started seeing a therapist too. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets kind of sad, honestly. Marcus reached out to his parents one night, about a month after the wedding disaster, and told them he wanted to apologize to people. He wanted to apologize to Vanessa, to her family, to the wedding guests, to everyone he'd embarrassed or hurt. His mom apparently told him, "The best apology you can give right now is to leave everyone alone and work on becoming a better person. That's it. Don't reach out to Vanessa. Don't try to explain or justify. Just focus on yourself and do better in the future." Which, honestly, was probably the best advice. An apology right then would have just been about making Marcus feel better, not about actually helping anyone else. About 2 months after the wedding, I heard that Vanessa had started dating someone new. Nothing serious, just casually seeing a guy she'd met through mutual friends. Someone normal, down to earth, who wasn't trying to use her for her family name. Her friend said she seemed lighter, happier, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. And Jamie? Well, she got engaged to David about 6 months later. He proposed during a quiet dinner at their favorite restaurant. Nothing flashy or showy. Just two people who loved each other, making a commitment. Jamie posted one picture on her Instagram, a simple shot of the ring on her finger with a caption that just said, "Yes." No hashtags, no elaborate photo shoot, no performance. Just genuine happiness. I heard through a mutual friend that Marcus saw the post, and apparently, instead of getting upset or jealous or weird about it, he just felt this wave of regret. Not regret that he'd lost Jamie, but regret for how he treated her. Regret for how he'd let his need for status and validation corrupt what they'd had. Regret for becoming someone he didn't even recognize anymore. As for Marcus's career, things got rough for him. Word had spread about what happened, and his company wasn't thrilled about the negative attention. Plus, a lot of his work had involved building relationships with clients and partners, and those relationships had partly been built through his connection to Vanessa's family. Without that connection, a lot of doors that had been open suddenly closed. He ended up leaving that company a few months later. Last I heard, he'd moved to a different city, taken a lower profile job, basically started over. His social media presence, which had once been so carefully curated and constant, was now basically non-existent. He'd completely changed his approach to life. One of his old friends ran into him about a year after the wedding disaster. They grabbed coffee and talked for a while. Marcus apparently seemed different, more humble, more self-aware. He admitted that destroying his relationship with Vanessa was one of the biggest regrets of his life, not because of what she could give him, but because he'd hurt someone who genuinely cared about him. I got so caught up in proving I was successful that I forgot what actually matters. I forgot about being a good person, about treating people right, about genuine connections. I chased status and validation instead of happiness. And look where it got me. Standing alone at what was supposed to be my wedding, watching the woman I'd hurt walk away, knowing I'd destroyed everything with my own hands. His friend asked him if he'd learned anything from the whole experience. He said, "I learned that you can't build a real life on a fake foundation. I was so busy performing success that I wasn't actually living. And the worst part is that I hurt good people in the process. Jamie, Vanessa, my family, my friends. I hurt everyone who cared about me because I was more concerned with what strangers on social media thought than with the people actually in my life." Now, I don't know if Marcus ever really changed or if that was just talk. People don't usually fundamentally change overnight, right? But I do know that his life now is nothing like the flashy, performative existence he was living before. Whether that's by choice or by circumstance, who's to say? As for Vanessa and Jamie, their lives moved on in much more positive directions. Vanessa eventually did find love again with someone who valued her for herself and not for her last name. She actually ended up starting her own business, something she'd always wanted to do but had put on hold during the wedding planning. The failed wedding, as traumatic as it was, kind of freed her to focus on her own goals and dreams instead of building a life that revolved around someone else. And Jamie and David, well, they got married in a small, intimate ceremony with just close family and friends. No elaborate productions, no social media hashtags, no performance. Just love, commitment, and genuine celebration. From what I heard, it was beautiful, and Jamie looked happier than anyone had ever seen her. The whole thing became kind of legendary in their social circles. The wedding that never was, people call it. It's the story everyone brings up when they're talking about wedding disasters or about the importance of honesty in relationships. It's the cautionary tale about what happens when you value appearance over authenticity, status over substance. Looking back on the whole thing, I think the craziest part isn't even the dramatic wedding crash itself. It's how it all could have been avoided if Marcus had just been honest with himself and with the people in his life. If he dealt with his insecurities and his need for validation in a healthier way. If he'd valued real connection over social status. Because at the end of the day, what did all that social climbing get him? A moment of public humiliation, a destroyed reputation, lost relationships, and the knowledge that he'd hurt people who cared about him. All because he couldn't be real, couldn't be genuine, couldn't value what actually matters in life. You know what the real kicker is? Marcus spent years trying to prove he was better than his old life, better than Jamie, worthy of Vanessa's social status. But in the end, both women moved on to find genuine happiness while he was left alone, having to rebuild everything from scratch. The thing he was so desperate to prove ended up being disproven in the most spectacular way possible. There's also something to be said about how social media played into all this, right? Like, Marcus's whole crisis was wrapped up in this need to project a perfect image online. Every post was carefully staged to show how amazing his life was, how successful he had become. But all that was just a facade hiding the truth, which was that he was deeply insecure, unhappy, and making terrible decisions. It makes you think about how many people are out there doing the same thing, right? Posting the highlight reels of their lives, making everything look perfect, when behind the scenes they're struggling or lying or just deeply unsatisfied. Marcus's story is an extreme example, but the underlying issue, that obsession with appearances and validation, that's something a lot of people deal with. And the really sad thing is that Marcus actually had a good thing going with Jamie originally. She loved him, supported him, believed in him. They could have built a real life together, but he threw it away because he thought he deserved better, because he was chasing some idea of success that was more about other people's perceptions than about his own happiness. Then, when he had Vanessa, who was actually perfect for him on paper, all the status and connections he had wanted, he couldn't even appreciate it because he was too busy looking backward, wondering if he'd made a mistake, reaching out to his ex, unable to commit. It's like he was so focused on getting what he wanted that once he had it, he didn't know what to do with it. You've got to feel a little bad for all three of them, honestly. Jamie, who wasted 4 years with someone who didn't value her. Vanessa, who almost married someone who was using her. And even Marcus, who was so trapped by his own insecurities and ego that he destroyed his own happiness. But out of the three of them, at least Jamie and Vanessa came out of it stronger and eventually happier. They learned important lessons about their own worth, about what they deserve in relationships, about the importance of honesty and genuine connection. Marcus learned some lessons too, though his came at a much higher cost. One thing that really stuck with people who witnessed the whole thing was Jamie's composure through it all. She didn't yell, didn't make a scene, didn't try to humiliate Marcus for revenge. She just calmly presented the truth and let people make their own judgments. She wasn't vindictive. She was just honest. And honestly, that made her actions even more powerful. Just saying.
Compare that to how Marcus handled everything, lying and hiding and performing, and then completely falling apart when he got caught. The contrast couldn't be more stark. It really showed who had genuine strength and who had just been putting on a show. I think about Vanessa's dad's reaction sometimes too. That man had welcomed Marcus into his family, had probably started to see him as a future son-in-law, had opened doors for him professionally and socially, and then to find out that Marcus had been lying to his daughter, using her, and reaching out to his ex? The betrayal of that must have been enormous. No wonder he blacklisted Marcus from their social circles. And you know what? Marcus deserved that. Not in a vindictive way, but in a natural consequences way. If you lie to people, use them, betray their trust, then yeah, they're going to close their doors to you. That's just how relationships work, personal or professional. The vendors all had to deal with the aftermath too, which I think people forget about. The photographer and videographer had documented the whole disaster. I wonder what they did with that footage. The caterers had prepared this elaborate meal that got eaten at what was basically a wake for a relationship instead of a celebration. The florist had created these beautiful arrangements for a ceremony that fell apart. Everyone involved had put in all this work for an event that ended in disaster. Actually, I heard that some of the vendors ended up not charging Vanessa's family the full amount out of sympathy for what happened. The photographer apparently gave them all the pre-ceremony shots for free and only charged for her time, not for the full wedding package. Little gestures of kindness in the middle of all the chaos. The story spread so widely that it even became a case study in some business schools and psychology classes. Professors used it as an example of how social media can warp people's values, how status-seeking behavior can become toxic, how important honest communication is in relationships. Marcus probably never imagined his biggest failure would become a teaching tool, but there you go. And you know what's funny? After everything that happened, after all the drama and fallout and gossip, the thing people remembered most wasn't even Marcus's lies or the crashed wedding. It was Jamie's courage. People talked about how brave she was to walk into that wedding, knowing she'd become the center of attention, knowing people would judge her, but doing it anyway, because she thought it was the right thing to do. She could have just ignored Marcus's messages, blocked his number, and moved on with her life. She could have let Vanessa marry him without knowing the truth. Nobody would have blamed her for that.
It wasn't her responsibility to fix Marcus's mess, but she did it anyway. And that took guts. I think that's ultimately what makes the story so interesting. It's not just a juicy scandal or a dramatic wedding crash. It's a story about authenticity versus performance, about genuine connection versus status-seeking behavior, about having the courage to do what is right, even when it's uncomfortable. It's about how lies eventually catch up with you, how you can't build a real life on a fake foundation, how important it is to be honest with yourself and others. Marcus wanted to show off his rich fiancée, wanted everyone to see how far he'd come, how successful he'd become. But in the end, his own lies and insecurities destroyed everything he'd been trying to build. The wedding that was supposed to be his ultimate status symbol became the site of his greatest humiliation. And the ex he had dismissed as not good enough was the one who exposed him. There's something almost poetic about it, in a tragic kind of way. So yeah, that's the story of he wanted to show off his rich fiancée, but his ex arrived with a secret that destroyed his wedding. Wild from start to finish, right? And the crazy thing is, this all really happened. Sometimes real life is more dramatic than any story you could make up. The last I heard about everyone involved, they were all in better places than they'd been during the wedding disaster. Jamie and David were happily married and expecting their first kid. Vanessa had successfully launched her business and was in a healthy relationship with someone who genuinely loved and respected her. Even Marcus, from what I heard, was slowly rebuilding his life and seemed to be doing actual work on himself rather than just performing growth for an audience. But I bet none of them will ever forget that day. The day that was supposed to be one of the happiest of Marcus's life became the day his carefully constructed image came crashing down. The day Vanessa almost made the biggest mistake of her life. The day Jamie had to do one of the hardest things she'd ever done. And you know what the real lesson is in all of this? Be genuine. Value real connections over appearances. Be honest with yourself and others. Don't use people. Don't lie to people who trust you. And if you're going to have doubts about marrying someone, deal with those doubts before you send out 250 wedding invitations. Because the truth always comes out eventually. And it's way better for it to come out when you're the one choosing to tell it than when your ex-girlfriend crashes your wedding to expose you in front of everyone you know.